Today, we are diving into a truly horrifying case that left me absolutely speechless. It's an unbelievable story of 7 children who were born into a house of horrors, a house only a few made it out of. As investigators uncovered the deplorable conditions under which this woman kept her home, more and more chilling secrets would come to light. And what they found in that home is so far beyond my worst nightmares, it's heartbreaking to know that innocent children had to live through that. But before we get into the disturbing details of this case, as most of you can probably tell, my hair is very important to me, and keeping it long, full, and healthy is a top priority. So when I noticed that my hair was starting to look more thin, I knew I needed to take action, so that is why I partnered with Nutrafol. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people. You can see faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. Everyone's root causes for hair thinning are so different, so one-size-fits-all approach for hair growth isn't going to cut it. Nutrafol has multiple different formulas tailored to give your hair what it needs throughout different stages of life, such as postpartum, menopause, and for different lifestyles, such as a plant-based diet. Nutrafol is physician-formulated with 100% drug-free ingredients which support visibly thicker, stronger hair from within by targeting the root causes of thinning, such as stress, hormones, ages, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism, as all of these things change throughout a woman's life. I started using Nutrafol a few months ago, so I'm still pretty new to it, but the biggest change I have noticed is that my hair sheds much less. I used to be pulling out wads of hair in the shower every time I washed my hair, and I just knew that that wasn't normal. So now when I can get through a shower with much less hair falling out, I feel so much more confident. So start your hair growth journey now with Nutrafol. Right now, Nutrafol is offering my audience $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you click the link down below and enter promo code RachelShannon. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair by ordering today. Using my code also helps to support my channel, so once again, click the link down below and use code RachelShannon today. Thanks again so much to Nutrafol for partnering with me on today's video. And with all of that being said, let's get into today's case. Erika Murray and her children all lived in a home in Blackstone, Massachusetts. Almost every day during the summer of 2014, Erika's son, then 10-year-old John, played with his friend and neighbor, then 13-year-old Pete. The two would hang out at Pete's house all the time, or they would play outside skateboarding all around the neighborhood and tossing around the ball. By August 26th, John asked Pete's mom, Betsy Brown, if he could stay with her the following day because his mom, Erika, was going to be out for a while. This prompted Miss Brown to speak with John's mom, who agreed. That day, now on August 27th, John headed over to Pete's house as planned, where they rode their skateboards in the driveway. At one point, Pete's mom left to run to the store really quick, but before she even made it to the store, she got a call from Pete. She answered and was immediately concerned because he sounded upset. He asked his mom to come home, saying that he couldn't get the babies to stop crying. This really confused her at first because Pete didn't have any younger siblings, but they explained that they were now at John's house playing there. She didn't know that John had any younger siblings either, but either way, Pete's mom turned around and headed to John's house, where she found the boys standing in the driveway. As soon as she pulled up and stepped out of the car, she could hear the sound of babies screaming and crying from inside the home. The boys led Miss Brown inside the home and upstairs, following the sounds of the crying babies. In the first bedroom, she found a severely malnourished 5-month-old infant who was lying in her crib wearing only a diaper. She was absolutely covered in urine and feces, which had also gotten all over the mattress. Next to the crib, there was the body of a dead dog lying on the floor. In another bedroom, they then found a 3-year-old who was also dirty and wearing a soiled diaper. It was later described that she had so much poop on her that it looked like she was dipped in feces. Her bed and her room had also been covered in urine and feces. Of course, immediately after finding these children and witnessing the horrific conditions of this home, which we will get more into in just a second, Betsy Brown called the police, who arrived shortly after. Of course, officers collected the 2 children they found before making their way throughout the rest of the home. They made their way into a 3rd bedroom, but could only push the door open a few inches because there was a pile of trash stacked several feet high pushed up against that door. The rest of the floor was also covered in trash. They did their best to take a look inside that room, and from where they were, they could also see that there were feces smeared all across the walls in that room. All throughout the rest of the home, from the moment you step in through the front door, as you make your way through each and every room, there were soiled diapers, trash, dirty clothes, used food containers, and rotten food just covering the floors, and in some places stacked over a foot high. There were rats and bugs everywhere. The kitchen sink was full of dirty dishes, so old that there were flies and maggots in and all around the sink. In the basement, they found much of the same, except they also discovered a potted marijuana plant with a light hanging over it, as well as a malnourished dog locked in a cage. The dog was also covered in scabs, scars, and had areas of missing fur. He was also covered in fleas. There was also a cat found in the home, which was also covered in fleas. Both pets were later removed from the home and taken to the vet, where they were treated for their flea infestations, and hopefully they found a loving home afterwards. Around 20 to 25 minutes after police started searching through the home, at around 4 p.m., Erika arrived to the home. She had her then 13-year-old daughter with her at the time, and the 2 had been dropped off by someone driving an SUV. Of course, once home, officers wanted to speak with her. She said that she had been out since around 10 a.m. that morning because she had things to do. The officer told her that it was unacceptable for her to leave her young children for that long, and she agreed. They then informed her that DCFS would be taking custody of all the children, and she happily agreed. She then asked the officers where the cat was. From there, officers knew that more needed to be done in that home, but it simply was not a safe environment for anybody to be in. They removed all the children and pets from that home before taking Erika to the station for further questioning. In that interview, officers said that Erika was calm, cooperative, and unemotional. She explained that all of those children are hers. Her boyfriend at the time, Raymond Riviera, was the father to all of her children. However, Erika explained that she kept her baby, 5-month-old Gina, and her toddler, 3-year-old Lisa, a secret from her entire family, including Ray. She said that she was embarrassed that she gave birth to 2 more children that she probably couldn't afford. So she gave birth to them in the home, then simply locked them in those rooms and didn't tell anybody about them. She never took them to the doctor or even outside the home in general. She said that when she left the home, John and Anne would watch the younger 2. However, when officers spoke with John and Anne, they said that Gina and Lisa are not their siblings. After this initial interview, Erika was charged with assault and battery on a child in relation to Gina and Lisa, as well as reckless endangerment of a child relating to the older 2 children. She pleaded not guilty to these charges and was subsequently released as she awaited trial. The next thing officers did was execute a search warrant for the home. They went in with hazmat suits because the home was determined to be unlivable for humans. As they entered that home, officers had their work cut out for them. As I described earlier, the house was in deplorable condition with trash, feces, rotting food, and pests everywhere. The goal of investigators at that point was to find proof of the younger children's identities and any documentation that could prove parental status. But what they ended up finding instead absolutely horrified them. And let me just warn you now, what I'm about to tell you is extremely upsetting. They ended up searching a closet within the bedroom where Gina and the body of the deceased dog were found. In that closet, they found a backpack. And when they opened it, they found the body of an infant which was still attached to the umbilical cord and placenta, which had then been wrapped in a pair of sweatpants and stuffed inside that backpack. In that closet, they also found yet another body of an infant, though this baby was pretty much skeletonized at that time. Then they searched in another room in that home where detectives discovered a box which contained the body of yet another deceased infant. In total, officers found 3 dead babies in that home. After this gruesome discovery, the 3 bodies were sent to the medical examiner for autopsies. The first baby, which had been found with the placenta and umbilical cord, was not wearing clothing or a diaper. The pathologist determined that it was possible that this baby had been a stillborn. However, the other 2 were found wearing diapers and were fully clothed in onesies. The pathologist explained that it was impossible to tell for sure whether one of those babies had been born alive or stillborn, but it had clothing on it, so it did appear that it was alive at one point. But the other baby, it was determined that she was alive when born and died at some point after. The pathologist determined that the babies had likely been dead for weeks to years before being found based on the level of decomposition. So it's really impossible to tell when any of this happened, when they were born, when they were killed, how long they had even been there. At this point, an agent with DCFS conducted an interview with Erika as well as her boyfriend, Ray. Once again, officers said that Erika appeared calm and collected, while Ray, he was hysterical. He was sobbing and clearly distraught. However, through that interview, neither of them asked about the well-being of the children, and Erika referred to her 5-month-old infant, Lisa, as it numerous times throughout. She went on to explain that she had created a fake profile for someone named Michelle Ridgway on Facebook. She did this as a way to explain why Lisa and Gina were always there. She told John and Anne, as well as everyone else who asked, that the youngest 2 were Michelle's children, but Michelle worked a lot of hours, so they had to babysit her kids all the time. So again, John and Anne didn't even know that these kids were their younger siblings. And all throughout this time, Ray claimed that he also didn't know that these were his kids. He also didn't know that he was even there most of the time, though I do think he knew about the whole Michelle situation, but he had no idea that those children were always in that room.
I was crushed that she would do that.
The man inside that Blackstone House of Horrors is telling his side of the story tonight, how he never knew of the hazardous conditions or the dead babies inside.
Oh, I'm crumbling.
A shaking Ramon Rivera saying he's broken and abused, a victim himself of his former girlfriend, Erika Murray, the woman now accused of hiding her infant's remains and forcing her surviving children to live in squalor. Rivera saying he never even knew about the remains of the 3 babies found in the so-called Blackstone House of Horror.
I was crushed that she would do that.
Rivera says he never knew about conditions on the 1st and 2nd floors because Murray forced him to live in the basement and rarely allowed him upstairs. Rivera says he also never knew that 2 of the 4 surviving children taken from the home were his.
I never saw the infant at all. I knew she was at least babysitting the older one, and I saw her once, but that was it.
Rivera now has nowhere to live. He says he quit his job at an office supply store and is awaiting a final payout so he can hire a lawyer.
After this interview with the DCFS agent, Erika was then interviewed again by police. She was asked if she had ever given birth to any other children who maybe didn't survive, but she said no. But officers then told her that they found the skeletal remains of an infant in her home, and at first, Erika said she knew nothing about it. She completely denied having anything to do with it, but she did ultimately admit that she did give birth to 1 infant at the home, but it wasn't alive when it came out. She said that after giving birth to a stillborn, she panicked and didn't know what to do. So instead of calling 911 or asking for help, she hid the body in the closet. At that point, Erika didn't make any other mention of the other babies that were found in that home. But of course, officers confronted her with this information as well. Again, she initially tried saying that both of those children were also stillborn, but as we just heard, There is evidence that at least one of those babies was alive when born, but again, it's thought that both of them were. So after some more pushing by officers, Erika eventually admitted that one of those infants, a baby girl, was born alive and survived for about a week. She said that one night she went to check on the baby but found that she was blue and not breathing. Once again, when asked why she didn't call 911 for either of these infants, she just said that she panicked. At this time, after finding all of this additional evidence, Erika was handed additional charges of second-degree murder, concealment of a body, and animal cruelty. For these charges, she was arrested once again, this time being held after being unable to post bail. Now I want to go back to the other children who were found alive in that home. After removing the kids from the home, they were placed into foster care. During that time, both Gina and Lisa were taken to the hospital for examination. It was found that 3-year-old Lisa was extremely weak and malnourished. She had a hard time even sitting upright, indicating that she had hardly moved her body all throughout her life. She was very shy and scared, refusing to make eye contact with anyone and refusing to speak. When an adult approached her, she would turn away, ball herself up, trying to make herself look as small as possible to avoid being seen. It was clear that she hadn't been interacted with much at all and didn't know how to act around others, and she was fearful of everybody around her. That really goes to show just how she was treated. 5-month-old Gina was also extremely malnourished and underdeveloped. The back of her head was flat from lying in the same position for basically her entire life. She didn't have any of the expected milestones for a 5-month-old. However, she did seem to react well to strangers, smiling up at them and appearing unafraid. Of course, both children appeared to have experienced significant neglect. Thankfully, after being placed into foster care, those kids improved very quickly. They began reaching their milestones and appeared much happier and healthier. Also during that time, the house where Erika and her children were living was determined to be a health and public safety hazard if it remained in place. This was even after the city spent 90 hours removing biohazardous materials, removing all the furniture, and even some of the drywall. Due to this, the home was demolished. For the years that followed Erika's arrest, the trial date had been set, but there were numerous delays in getting the case tried. The defense was working to determine Erika's mental status. They also tried getting the murder charges dismissed, saying there wasn't enough evidence. It ended up taking almost 5 years for this case to go to trial, but finally, by June of 2019, Erika's trial began. The prosecution argued that Erika created 2 different worlds for her children, a world for the wanted and a world for the unwanted. The outside family, friends, and neighbors knew about the wanted children, though they too were made to live in unimaginable squalor. Neighbors testified at trial that they had no idea that there were any children within that home other than John and Ann. Betsy Brown, the mother who John led into the home, also testified about her experience. She said that when she first entered the home, she was met with a horrendous stench, the worst thing she's ever smelled. There were trash and debris everywhere, and as she made her way to the second floor, it just got worse and worse. When she found 3-year-old Lisa, she was in the room alone again, covered in feces basically from head to toe. She had feces on her hands and left handprints of the feces on the walls. She was rocking back and forth and crying until Betsy came in and spoke with her, getting her to calm down. After going into the second bedroom and discovering 5-month-old Gina, that is when she called the authorities. Betsy said that after officers arrived and spoke with Erika, she left the home. But as she was making her way out, she said that Erika was upset with 10-year-old John, saying to him, "I can't believe you did this to me," blaming John for exposing the horrors that he was forced to live through.
Dry urine, feces, food, Oreo cookies that was laid on the bed that was crushed up for the children to try to eat.
A DCF worker testifying that Murray admitted to lying to her oldest 2, telling them that they were babysitting the toddler and 5-month-old, not that they were siblings. Murray, she said, even referred to the toddler as it.
Erika presented with a flat affect, seemed very calm.
Again, the prosecution discussed the horrific conditions of that home, which I won't get into again because we just know it's absolutely disgusting. Not only did Erika leave her 4 children to live in that home, but she had a poor dog locked in a cage, a cat running around, and another dog which had died in that home, and she just left it there. They brought forward the doctors who examined Gina and Lisa, saying that these 2 poor babies were profoundly neglected throughout their entire lives. I detailed their findings earlier, so again, I won't make you hear those details again. But 3-year-old Lisa had to live all those years without any human interaction. She never left the home and never experienced any form of love, compassion, or care from her parents. Of course, baby Gina suffered unimaginable neglect as well, but Lisa went through it for so much longer, and I can't even imagine the lasting effects it's going to have on that poor baby as she grows older. Then the prosecution discussed the deceased infants found hidden in those closets. Like I said, one of the infants had the umbilical cord and placenta still attached, so it could be reasonably argued that the baby was a stillborn, but the other 2 infants were dressed in clothes and a diaper, indicating that they had been alive at some point. Why would you dress a stillborn? The other stillborn wasn't dressed, so why would she have dressed the other 2? Even though the pathologist couldn't say for sure about one of the infants, there was enough evidence to prove that the other infant had been alive before its death. Erika said herself that she didn't want any more children and was embarrassed that she kept having them. So it can be reasonably argued that she panicked and killed those other 2 babies after they were born. Either that or she just left them to die, leading to them starving to death.
Why did you put the baby in the closet?
Panic. Blackstone mom Erika Murray tells state police about secretly giving birth to her 2 children she said no one knew about.
But I was amazed that you could actually do that, without any medication. Did you lay on the floor, in the bathtub?
Yeah.
Which one?
On the floor.
On the floor, okay.
This almost 2 weeks after police made a discovery in her home so grim they had to wear hazmat suits to go in.
I can see cobwebs connected from the door to some of the clothing that the baby was rested on.
It was 5 years ago, and neighbors called the police, led them to the hidden toddler and infant in a dark, filthy room.
Are you proud of your children?
Yes.
You love them?
Yes.
Okay. Well, why would you want anybody to know about it? Is there anything to be ashamed of? No?
Erika is responsible for so much unimaginable pain and suffering. 7 children total were born to a mother who did not want them. 4 of them were forced to live in conditions so bad they were determined to be uninhabitable for human life. 2 of them were locked in rooms, tossed to the side, hidden from everyone because they were an embarrassment to her. This woman is a deplorable monster who deserves nothing less than to rot in prison. On the other hand, the defense argued that all of this happened because Erika was depressed. Throughout the years awaiting her trial, Erika had been examined by various doctors who assessed her mental well-being. It was found that Erika had a low IQ, severe deficits in working memory, and a very limited, rigid way of thinking which impacted how she functioned in the world. She had a very low self-esteem, was terrified of rejection, and had a very passive personality. She was diagnosed with major depression and was found to have an avoidant and dependent personality disorder. When faced with any challenge, she wasn't able to think critically enough to find a solution, so she avoided it. Even with her first 2 pregnancies, the children she did keep, she showed these avoidant behaviors. According to Erika's parents, they didn't find out she was pregnant until she was in the visible late stages. She was living with her parents at the time, so when Anne was born, her parents did most of the work to care for the baby, while Erika continued to show avoidant behaviors. When she became pregnant the second time, she moved in with Ray, who she depended on for food, money, and transportation. Once living with Ray, Erika claimed that he became emotionally abusive. He would yell at her, lose his temper, and threaten her. He became jealous if she socialized or left the home. It was argued that her deep fear of abandonment led her to tolerating his verbal and emotional abuse. Her fear and anxiety also led her to having very limited social interaction, which resulted in her having no friendships or interpersonal relationships. It was also said that experiencing a significant amount of trauma can impact memory, leading to overall impaired cognitive functioning. So, when Erika found herself pregnant for the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th time, she hid it from her family and Ray, fearing that Ray would abandon her if he found out she was pregnant. He made it clear that he didn't want any more children after the first 2, so her passive and anxious personality led her to hiding those 3 babies, all of which were argued to be stillborns, rather than calling the authorities or asking for help. By hiding their bodies, by hiding those other children, she could avoid having to face reality. As a side note, I do want to note that Ray was charged with child endangerment and drug charges relating to the marijuana plant they found. Ray continued to claim that he didn't know about Lisa or Gina, but it was said that Ray slept in a room just about 7 or 8 feet away from those children, so it's hard to believe that he didn't know about the 2 children, especially young children who definitely cried often. As far as I've been able to find, I don't yet know the status of these charges for Ray. Either way, basically, the defense argued that Erika's behaviors did not involve criminal conduct, rather it involved severe mental illness. She lacked critical thinking skills and had such a severe depression and avoidant personality that she neglected her kids to avoid that responsibility. They also argued that there's no evidence to prove how those 3 other babies died, so it can't be said beyond a reasonable doubt that she did anything to cause their deaths. Basically, they're saying that she hid their bodies well enough, she kept people away for long enough that they decomposed to the point that she could just get away with it. That's basically what they're saying. Now, after hearing from the defense regarding Erika's mental illness, the prosecution came back and said that yes, she may have been depressed. She may have suffered a fear of rejection, as a lot of people do. But Erika had no deficits that could rise to the level of being intellectually disabled. However, the testimony from this psychologist was actually disregarded by the judge. At the end of the trial, both sides made their closing arguments. There is actually no jury for this trial because Erika's defense team waived the right to a jury trial, instead opting for a bench trial, leaving the judge to determine the verdict. I do think this was a smart move on the defense's part because any person with any sort of empathy will look at Erika and know that she is a deplorable monster. Anyone who doesn't hear cases like this on a regular basis for their career will look at her in a much more negative light. Either way, in the end, Erika Murray was found not guilty for the charges of murder and child endangerment, and guilty for charges of assault and battery on a child as well as animal cruelty.
After considering all the evidence, I find the Commonwealth has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Miss Murray had the charge or custody of both the dog and the cat, and due to the deplorable conditions that existed in the house, the specifics of which I will discuss in a minute or two, Miss Murray unnecessarily failed to provide each of them with proper shelter and a sanitary environment, and therefore I do find her guilty of both counts of cruelty to animals. I find that Miss Murray suffered from long-standing, pre-existing cognitive deficits, including a working memory and processing deficits, preventing her from processing information and formulating logical solutions. Miss Murray's poor working memory and cognitive deficits seriously affected her decision-making and judgment. I find the Commonwealth has not met its burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt Miss Murray engaged in wanton or reckless conduct as defined in the statute, and therefore I find Miss Murray not guilty of reckless endangerment of either Kayla or Nicholas. Because the wanton and reckless conduct for this crime can be measured by the reasonable person standard, I find that the Commonwealth has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that a reasonable person who knew what Miss Murray knew, despite her mental impairments, would have realized the risk. I therefore find that the Commonwealth has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Ms. Murray wantonly or recklessly permitted Mackenzie and Madison to suffer substantial bodily injury, and I find her guilty of both counts of assault and battery on a child with substantial bodily injury.
As if that isn't bad enough, at the sentencing hearing, Erika was handed just 6 to 8 years behind bars for her charges, with credit for the 5 years she already served.
There's nothing about this case that is a rational, sensible set of events. So when I sit and I think long and hard about what sentence is appropriate given the crimes that she has been convicted of, I have to take into account that the normal does not necessarily apply. I have taken into account the nature and circumstances of the offense, and I say the nature and circumstances, I mean the total circumstances of this case. I have taken into serious consideration, and it's weighed heavily on my mind, her mental state at the time that the offense occurred. I've also considered the relationship between Ms. Murray and the fact that these were her kids. I've also taken into consideration the nature and the degree of the physical and perhaps the mental harm, I don't know much about that was caused by her actions. Clearly the vulnerability of the victims in this case, well, they were children. They were the most vulnerable and had no way to defend or protect themselves.
In consideration of the offenses to which you stand convicted on indictment 14-1393, count 3, the court orders you be punished by confinement to the Mass Correctional Institute at Cedar Junction for not more than 5 years, not less than 4 years. With respect to count 7, court orders you be punished by confinement to the Mass Correctional Institute at Cedar Junction for not more than 3 years, not less than 2 years, to run on and after your release from count 3. You'll be given credit in the amount of 1,765 days. With respects to counts 4 and 8, the court orders you be placed on probation for a term of 5 years to run from and after your release from sentence and concurrent with each other.
So she had to serve 6 to 8 years total for causing the death of multiple animals, severely neglecting 2 children and leaving them with lifelong trauma, and forcing her other 2 children to live in a biohazardous hellhole. Make it make sense. Now, this case was decided in 2019, and as you know, it's 2025, so 6 years have passed since then. Based on her sentence, she should have been out a couple years ago, but I've seen absolutely nothing on her case since 2019. There are no updates on whether she's been released or not. Maybe she was released and changed her name so that she wouldn't get so much hate in the media. I'm not sure. If anyone knows more about that part of this case, please do let us know down below. But with that being said, that is all of the information I have on today's case. Personally, I do think she killed 2 of those infants, the ones that were wearing clothes. I think she gave birth to them, then probably just left them there and neglected them to death. I don't understand how you could say anything different given that they were wearing clothes. And based on the conditions they were living in, even if those babies did just randomly die, it had to be because of their circumstances. Babies don't just die for no reason, except in very rare cases like SIDS, which even then, a lot of times there is a reason. And then even to add to that, it doesn't usually happen 3 times in a row. I do believe that she had depression as well as an avoidant personality disorder and anxiety. I don't see any other way that someone could live in such disgusting conditions and watch their children live in those conditions, except for if there's something so seriously wrong with them that they either just don't see a problem with the filth or they can't bring themselves to do anything about it. So yes, I do think she suffered from mental illness severely. But that does not excuse how she forced her children to live. It doesn't excuse the fact that she left 2 young children in the rooms all alone to suffer. It doesn't excuse those 3 dead babies found in her home. It doesn't excuse the animal abuse and neglect. It doesn't excuse any of it, and I'm absolutely horrified that she got such a light sentence. It sets a horrible precedent, and I have a feeling that as soon as she's released, she's just gonna go right back to her old ways. I just hope that she doesn't keep getting pregnant because clearly she lacks the critical thinking skills to think, hey, I should get on birth control or get my tubes tied if I don't want to have more kids. It's just unbelievable. But you all heard my thoughts. You know I could rant on about this for hours, but now I want to hear from you all. What do you think of the conditions of that home? How did Erika and Ray let it get so damn bad? And do you think she killed those babies? Do you think Ray knew about the other kids she was hiding? Let's discuss this and any other thoughts you have in the comments below, because I know there are going to be a lot of them. But with that, if you liked this video, please make sure to go ahead and leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to turn that notification bell too on so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. All will be linked down below. And if you have any case suggestions, please make sure to fill out the Google form, which is also listed down below. With that, I hope you guys have an amazing week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.